A couple of months ago, I did a product review of the Vargo Titanium multi-fuel stove. And let me tell you, I got some crazy responses from you guys. Some things where folks were saying they loved the stove, it was the best stove they'd ever owned. Other folks telling me I might as well just throw it in the garbage because I wasted my money. Now, to be fair to everyone, this was my first official alcohol stove. I've used alcohol burners and different styles of cook stoves, but I never used an official alcohol-based stove in the past. And I dared to say, is it the greatest stove? And that was based off of product reviews. Well, I took what you said to heart, and I decided, let's try something completely different. So, I went the exact opposite. The Vargo Triad is one of the most expensive stoves on the market, so I figured, why not test out the cheapest stove I could find? And that's what this is. I paid a whopping $4.30 some odd cents. It is obviously significantly larger than the Triad, and it's made out of stainless steel, so it's heavier. But for $4.50, is it a good stove? Did I waste my money? Or could this potentially be the new greatest thing out there compared to the Vargo Triad, that is? So today we're going to test out both stoves. We're going to do some comparisons on how long it takes for the stove to bloom and then some boil time. And we'll see, is the $35 Vargo Triad better than the $4 nameless stove that I got off of Amazon? Before we get started, let's get some basic specs. The Vargo Triad is 30 grams, whereas our nameless stove, including the pot holder, is 89 grams. Looking at the stoves side by side, there's obviously no comparison either. The Vargo Triad is less than half the size of our nameless stove. Yes, the fuel capacity is going to be much greater in this one as well, but does that matter? Today we're going to be using a basic denatured alcohol. The Vargo Triad has a 1.5 ounce capacity, so that's what we're going to fill it with. And we'll match the weights in order to guarantee it's the same fuel quantity in each stove. So we have roughly 1.5 ounces in there, which is bringing us to 29 grams. To be consistent with our nameless stove, we're going to fill this to 29 grams as well. Okay, also roughly 1.5 ounces. And I went to 29 and 30 grams, it's bouncing. We'll call that close enough. Okay, so we've got our stoves both filled with 1.5 ounces of denatured alcohol. The first test we're going to do is just to burn them and see how long it takes for the stove to bloom. Now, in the past when I've used the Vargo Triad, it didn't actually bloom the first time around. It took 2 heatings before it fully bloomed. I don't know if that's going to be the case with both of these stoves again today. Outside temperature, it's just over 40 degrees. So it's not exactly an ideal day for this testing, but we work with what we've got. So about a minute into the burn, it did actually start to bloom. But we didn't see a full bloom until about a minute and a half. At 2 minutes, we had a nice, beautiful blue flame. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you guys with watching this stove try and bloom. We are currently at... Oh, my phone even fell asleep, it's been so long. We are currently at 5 minutes and 53 seconds, and this generic alcohol stove has not bloomed yet. It does have a nice hot flame coming up out of the center, but it has not bloomed. I'm going to let it keep running just to see what happens, but ironically, the Vargo Triad is about 15 minutes into its original burn. It's still blooming and burning beautifully. So, for all you haters out there, the Vargo is so far winning this little test. We're going to stop the timer right there. It has just started to bloom at 12 minutes and 54 seconds. So as the first round of tests are completing, obviously the Vargo Triad is a fraction of the size and a fraction of the weight. It has the 1.5 ounce capacity, whereas our generic stove has, I'm guessing, probably about 5 ounces. I haven't fully filled it because, quite honestly, I don't want to waste that much fuel on this stove. When you look at bloom time, the Vargo Triad was able to hit its bloom in about 1.5 minutes and it achieved a good full bloom in under 2 minutes. Our generic stove, at 12 minutes and 54 seconds, it started to bloom, and it still hasn't really got a full solid bloom. I'm about 14 minutes into the burn time on it right now, and I'm just kind of waiting for the fuel to finally finish up so we can move on to our next test. Okay, a quick interruption for a shameless plug of the channel. My name's Jeremy, and this is Northwest Walking. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for checking me out. I try and upload new outdoor adventures or tips and tricks videos every Wednesday. The schedule is kind of a hit and miss, but I'm trying to get a little bit more consistent here in the new year. If you're enjoying the content, feel free to give it a thumbs up and maybe hit that subscribe button so that you won't miss out on next week's adventures. Thank you so much for the support. It is greatly appreciated. Okay, for our next test, we're going to try boiling some water just to find out how long does it take for each stove to boil water. I have my 550 milliliter pot, and we've got a couple of bottles of water that have been sitting out for about a half an hour, roughly the same temperature. Again, we're in the low 40s today. We're going to put in 300 milliliters of water, more just for time's sake than anything. And then we're going to fill both of our stoves again to that 1.5 ounces of fuel, or 30 grams. Well, you know what they say about a watched pot never boils. I'm not going to bore you guys with watching the entire thing happen. We're going to speed it up a little bit, jump near the end. But what I do want to point out right off the bat is both of these stoves performed very similar. The Vargo Triad, it actually burned out at about 16 minutes. I had to pause it, add another 1/2 ounce of fuel, and then start the timer again. And at about 23, 24 minutes, I just kind of gave up. I was able to bring it up to a nice steaming temperature, never able to get it to simmer, and absolutely did not come to a boil. For our generic no-name stove, that wasn't quite the same case. At about 18 minutes, it started to get a very light simmer, and it looked like it was going to start to boil, but at 20 minutes, it started to die back down as the flame was dying. At 22 minutes, I gave up on that because the fuel ran out, and I decided not to put more fuel into it. So between the two stoves, you've got a $30 difference and obviously a capacity difference. But using the same amount of fuel, what I found is the $4.30 some odd cent stove actually had a longer burn time and burned hotter than the Vargo Triad. So did it beat the Vargo Triad? I don't know. Neither stove was actually able to produce a boil. But what it did do is bring the water up to a higher temperature faster, and it used less fuel to do so. So you guys be the judge. Which stove should I go with? Should I use my $4.35 generic branded stove, or should I use my $35 Vargo Triad? You let me know what you think in the comments, and if there's something else that I should be out there trying, let me know that as well. I'll try and pick something up, and we'll do another product test out. So until next time, folks, thanks for watching, and hope to see you out there on the trail soon.